veins like an undeniable legacy. With an unstoppable drive to carve his own path in the ring, Adonis heads to Philadelphia, the city where Apollo Creed once faced off against the relentless Rocky Balboa in a historic showdown. Once he arrives in the vibrant city of brotherly love, Adonis sets out to find Rocky, hoping the retired fighter will share his wisdom and experience to help him become the boxer he's always dreamed of being. It all starts back in 1998 inside a juvenile detention center in Los Angeles, California. That's where we find Adonis Johnson, the son of a woman who had an affair with the former heavyweight champion Apollo Creed. Adonis has just laid a beating on another kid, all because the guy said something disrespectful about his mother, and she's no longer around. As for his father, Adonis knows absolutely nothing about him. That's when a woman named Marianne shows up to see him. She speaks with one of the staff members, who informs her that Adonis got into a fight today and is now in custody. Despite his troubles, the staff member insists he's a good kid. He just tends to get into fights a little too often. Later, Marianne finally comes face to face with Adonis and asks him why he fights. He assumes she's a social worker and immediately tells her he's not about to be placed in another group home. But Marianne makes it clear she's not a social worker. Adonis explains that he hit the other kid because he ran his mouth about his mom. She offers her condolences, telling him she understands how painful it is to lose someone you love. When her father passed, she carried that anger for a long time. Adonis snaps back, saying he doesn't have a father, but Marianne tells him that's not entirely true. His father died before he was born, but that doesn't mean he never had one. Curious, Adonis asks if she knew him. That's when Marianne drops the truth. Apollo Creed was her husband, and now she's here because she wants to offer Adonis a home. She asks him if that's something he'd even consider. Flash forward to the present. Adonis is in Tijuana, Mexico, gearing up for a fight. Inside the ring, he comes out on top, securing another victory. 12 hours later, we see him at his day job, working in an office. But then in a bold move, Adonis makes a decision. He hands his boss his resignation letter, ready to step into the life he truly wants. The boss, caught off guard, asks if this is some kind of joke, especially since Adonis was just offered a promotion. But Adonis calmly explains that this job just isn't the right fit for him. The boss, still baffled, asks what he plans to do next, but Adonis simply thanks him and walks out. When he gets home, he turns to Marianne and tells her he wants to talk about his job. She asks if he's seen his new office yet, if they've already hired his assistant. She's proud of him, no doubt about it. But later that night, Adonis finds himself glued to the screen, watching old footage of his father's fight against Rocky Balboa. The next day, he heads to the Delphi Boxing Academy, the very gym Apollo Creed once called home. He shows the trainer what he did in Tijuana, but the guy doesn't hold back. He tells him straight up that ain't real boxing. Adonis insists he's ready, saying he'll start local, build up some buzz, and then take it from there. But the trainer doesn't budge. He reminds Adonis that the fighters in this gym, they're out here fighting for their lives, and then with a hard dose of reality, he brings up the past. His father died in the ring. This ain't a game. Adonis fires back, saying he never even knew his father, that they got no connection. The trainer makes it crystal clear he won't train him. In fact, he'll make sure nobody else does either. But Adonis isn't the type to back down. Ignoring the warning, he turns to the fighters in the gym and throws down an offer. His Mustang is on the line. All they gotta do, land one clean shot to his head. A champion steps up to the challenge. What follows is a brutal exchange, but it doesn't even last a full minute. Still, he's not done. He calls for the next challenger, ready to go again. This time, he gears up properly, puts on the right protection, and steps back into the fight. They trade blows, fists flying, but in the end, Adonis just isn't prepared. He loses, and with that loss, his Mustang is gone. But even with that defeat, the fire in him doesn't die. Back at home, he turns to Marianne and admits he only came back to talk to her. Then, without hesitation, he tells her he quit his job. That's when Marianne notices the bruise forming around his eye. She asks how it happened, wondering if it was from his time in Mexico. With a mix of concern and sarcasm, Marianne tells him that, if anything, she should be the one landing a punch on him. Then she reminds him how there were times she had to help Apollo up the stairs because he could barely walk. She even mentions having to clean him up because he couldn't do it himself. With firm conviction, she asks if that's really what he wants, or if he'd rather risk brain damage and end up so hurt he can't even speak. Adonis, unfazed, responds that he's gonna get hurt either way, but Marianne doesn't let it slide. She makes it clear that Apollo didn't just get hurt, he lost his life in the ring. People in this sport put everything on the line, and she didn't bring him into her home just for him to throw it all away. She tells him straight he's better than this. Adonis lets her know that he's leaving soon, fully committing himself to the fight, but Marianne isn't done yet. She reminds him that just because he's his father's son doesn't mean he has to follow his path, and with one final warning, she tells him if he's gonna step into someone else's ring, he better not call her. Now Adonis moves to Philadelphia, settling into his new life. Before long, he decides to visit Rocky Balboa's restaurant. Stepping inside, his eyes land on a framed photograph on the wall. Moments later, he comes face to face with Rocky himself. Adonis points out the image, recognizing it as the 10th round of the first fight between Rocky and Apollo. Rocky nods, surprised, and asks how he knows that. That's when Adonis brings up a rumor he's heard about a third fight between Rocky and Apollo, one that happened behind closed doors. Intrigued, Rocky asks how he knows about that. Adonis sees his chance and asks the big question. who won. But Rocky, keeping it close to the chest, simply tells him that's a secret. Adonis doesn't waste any time and tells Rocky he wants him to be his trainer. But Rocky, serious as ever, tells him those days are behind him. He doesn't do that kind of work anymore. Still, Adonis is hungry to know more about his father's legacy. He asks Rocky just how good Apollo really was. Rocky, with nothing but respect, tells him Apollo was the best, no doubt about it. But Adonis can't help but wonder, if Apollo was the best, how did Rocky beat him? Rocky gives it to him straight, time beat Apollo. Time beats everybody, that's just how it goes. Then Adonis shifts gears, bringing up something personal. He asks Rocky if, back when Mickey died, Apollo came to see him. Did he manage to convince him not to walk away? He recounts how Apollo took him to Los Angeles, trained him, helped him get back on his feet. Intrigued by how much Adonis knows, Rocky gives him a look and asks how he's so familiar with all this, and then he really sees the resemblance. So Rocky asks, almost joking, if he's Apollo's cousin or something. Without hesitation, Adonis sets the record straight. Apollo Creed was his father. Rocky shakes his head, not buying it. He tells Adonis that he doesn't believe him, but Adonis doesn't miss a beat. He tells him to call Marianne, the phone still works. He reminds Rocky that they haven't talked since the funeral, where she mentioned his speech was a good one. That's when it sinks in. Rocky realizes the truth. Adonis really is Apollo's son. Adonis wastes no time. He asks Rocky to train him, but Rocky doesn't just say yes. Instead, he asks why would he want to be a fighter when he's got so many other options. If Apollo was still around, he'd probably tell him the same thing. Adonis doesn't flinch. He tells Rocky he's been fighting his whole life. He doesn't have another choice. Rocky leans in, shaking his head. There's always a choice, he says. He thinks back to his own time in the ring, to what went down that night. He admits that fight should have been stopped, that he should have done something, but Adonis pushes back, saying maybe his father chose to go out like a fighter. Rocky doesn't hesitate this time. If Apollo had a real choice, he'd be right here, talking with his son. Finally, Adonis, seeing the bond forming between them, asks the question that's been hanging in the air. Who won the third fight? Rocky doesn't hold back. Apollo, he says. Simple as that. That night, Adonis is back in his apartment studying fight videos of Ricky Conlan, one of the biggest names in boxing. But getting some rest? That's a different story. His neighbor's blasting music, making it impossible to sleep. Frustrated but determined, he gets up, heads over, and knocks on her door. When she opens up, he tells her straight. He can hear the music. He's got to be up early to train, and he needs some peace and quiet. She smirks, says she'll turn it down, won't hear a peep, then shuts the door in his face. But just as he's walking away, the music cranks right back up to the same deafening level. The next day, Adonis stops by Rocky's old gym. The trainer there eyes him and asks what he's looking for. Adonis tells him he wants in. The trainer lays it out, $20 a month, and he'll set him up with routines, keep an eye on him when he can. Without a second thought, Adonis agrees. He jumps into training right away, carefully watching the other fighters, mimicking every move the trainer shows them. As he steps out of the gym and walks down the street, he spots a poster with his neighbor on it. Curious, he decides to check out the place, which turns out to be a bar. Once inside, he sees her performing on stage. Her voice, her presence, it all captivates him. The next day, Adonis hears about the upcoming fight of the guy who took his Mustang. This guy is set to face Ricky Conlan, and it's his last professional fight. Apparently, he's got some serious anger issues. Before the match was even official, he broke his opponent's jaw. Because of this, the challenger spot for the champion is now up for grabs. Later on, Adonis meets up with Rocky, calling him this time. He asks what kind of drills he can do to improve his hand speed. Rocky mentions a trainer named Pete, known for his skills, someone who could really help him level up, but Adonis points out that Pete is mostly busy with his own fighter, so he's been training himself. Rocky then asks if he knows who Creed is, but Adonis makes it clear he doesn't see himself as that name. He's doing things his own way. People know him as Johnson, his mother's last name. It just makes things easier. Since Rocky won't train him, Adonis suggests maybe he could just give him some pointers, but Rocky tells him to quit pushing. In the end though, he writes out a list of exercises for him. Adonis just snaps a photo of the paper and tells him he's saving it to the cloud, even though, truth be told, he doesn't fully get what the cloud actually is. Later that night, Adonis leaves a voice message for Marianne, letting her know he's got himself an apartment and he's doing alright. It's not much, but he's working on it. In his message, he tells her how much he misses her, how he'd love to hear from her, and that she should call him whenever she gets the chance. After that, he heads over to his neighbor's place. She asks if the music is too loud. He tells her no, that he actually heard her playing at the bar and figured she might want a break. So he throws out an idea, grabbing dinner. She gets curious and asks where he's from. When he tells her he's from LA, she playfully asks if that's how guys invite women out over there. Adonis quickly clarifies he was just wondering if she was hungry. It's not a date. But when he catches that spark of interest in her eyes, he decides to just let it be. Just as he's about to leave, she stops him and asks if he's actually hungry. That's how they end up agreeing to hit up a nice spot in the city where they start getting to know each other on a deeper level. Over dinner, Adonis finds out that she has progressive hearing loss. At some point, she's going to lose her ability to hear completely, but she's already coming to terms with it, which is why she's learning sign language. The conversation flows naturally, and while they also talk about Adonis, she mentions she has a big performance coming up. Intrigued, Adonis asks if he can be there for it, turning what started as just a casual dinner into something more meaningful. Meanwhile, Rocky makes a visit to the cemetery cemetery to pay his respects to those who are no longer around. While he's there, he shares that life's been steady, no troubles, no debts, but he admits that sleeping isn't always easy. The back pain gets to him, and moving around isn't like it used to be. In this quiet moment of reflection, he starts to reconsider Adonis's request, and just like that, he finds himself back at the gym. He tells Adonis that his father was a special kind of man, but whether or not he has that same fire, it all depends on how much work he puts in. If he's not all in, Rocky's gonna make a choice of his own. Adonis, looking him straight in the eye, tells him no one ever taught him about this world. Every punch he's ever thrown, he's done it on his own. But if Rocky's really willing to teach him, then he's ready to give it everything he's got. And just like that, the training begins. Later, Adonis stops by Bianca's place, and between them, something real starts to grow. One quiet afternoon, while they're making music and locking eyes, they share a kiss, a moment that seals their connection. The next day, Adonis stays focused on training, pushing himself harder as he gears up for his first professional fight. But Rocky isn't convinced he's ready for that kind of challenge just yet. Adonis insists he is. This is